This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but to get on a mandate. Get it on, and welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus coming from his office.
Yeah, we're both wearing our basic funeral black, I think, to commemorate the death of the Constitution here in California, which is, anybody who says that we're overblowing what's happening here is obviously not watching what's happening. We are in the midst of the craziest constitutional stripping of rights I think I know that I've ever witnessed in 40 some odd years.
Well, I think we both have our own tales.
Oh boy.
Tales of the horse. Tales of the horse, this segment should be called. We should get some manure company to sponsor it. Tales of the horse. I was walking down. Yeah, so there's the horse trail, which is really now turned into a symbolic freedom trail, an underground railroad for rich white people in La Cañada.
Exactly. And ironically, how far would you say your house is from the trail? It's feet.
It's feet. No, well, you could probably get me off on this technicality, which is I can access the trail from my house without having to go through police tape and go through the front of the trail. So I'm kind of grandfathered mid-trail, if you think about it.
Exactly. Where I grew up on Beulah, you're down on the other end of the trail, but where I grew up on Beulah, my father's house was literally right adjacent to the trail. You could go down the hill, you'd be in the wash, literally,
right.
That goes down to Hahamanga. So the trail from your house to my house, I would have to walk maybe a football field to get to the trail on Commonwealth, but we're connected basically by the Freedom Trail.
Right, the Freedom Trail. And it was it's not the Trail of Tears, it's the Trail of Beers and Don Julio, 1942.
92.
What year's the Don Julio? Sorry.
1942. It's exactly what it was.
Sorry.
For 1942. Right. That's the year that did.
I was, yes.
Well, I call it, you call it that. I call it the busybody trail. It really has become the busybody trail. But go on, tell your story.
I was walking Phil, the dog, down the trail. I'd crossed over from one side to the other. It was about 5 p.m. a few nights ago. In an unmarked car, just a sort of civilian car, just pulled up and stopped right at the curb. And I knew there was only one reason this person was stopping here. It's because of the trail and my proximity to the trail. There was no house or driveway. There was no friends paying a visit. I knew what was going on. And a 63-year-old guy got out of the car and he looked at me and he said, what are you doing on the trail? And I looked at him and I said, where's your mask? And he said, where's your mask? Which I
love it. Right.
I love it. And I said, I'm not a hysteric. I'm obviously on the trail. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about the mask either. But where's your mask, since you seem so concerned? And he said, it's in the car. And I said, well, why don't you go get it? Because this is unsafe. And he said, it's in the car. And then I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm taking pictures for the city. I'm taking pictures of the front of the trail for the city. And then I said, why don't you take a picture of yourself not wearing a mask and include it in your dangerous mosaic of pictures that you present to the city? And then he
wearing flip-flops? Was he wearing flip-flops?
No, he was wearing tennis shoes and
was he
slacks.
Heavy set?
No.
Heavy set?
No, he worked for the city. And he said, people keep tearing down the police tape. And I said,
all us upper white middle class scofflaws in the hard scrabble community in La Cañada, Flint Ridge.
Right. And I said to him, you know what you guys ought to do? You ought to put some of those tank traps that they had on the beach in Normandy. The Germans set up a bunch of tank traps. They're basically, railroad ties that come up to a spike. And if you put those at the head of all these trails, that might stop people. And then he grunted, and I walked away. And the good news is I had Drew on my ear pod the entire time. So Drew got to hear this entire exchange and was going ballistic on the other side.
Gary can back me up. I sent him because I didn't even believe that this thing existed. There's apparently a La Cañada Trails Council, which is great. More power to him. Maybe Paulette's even a member. I have no idea. But I ran into an old friend who introduced me while I'm walking in the morning to one of the members of the La Cañada Trails Council, who proudly told me that they're now about to enter into negotiations with hiring armed guards on the trail, which just it's such a perfect petri dish for everything that is wrong in America, that a trails council, when you're on a trail that is, it's hard to convey to people just how remote these things are. You can't even believe that you're less than 15 miles from downtown LA. There are equestrian trails, which have large amounts of horse shit on them all the way through, which the dogs love. But they're going to hire armed guards to keep you off the trail, where if you go on to Descanso by Descanso Gardens any night at 5 or 6 o'clock, it looks like the Duda parade is going down there with a number of bicyclists and people who are walking. That's fine on the streets. Let's have it crowded. Foothill Boulevard, crowded. But God forbid you're on a trail where there's nobody around and we're going to hire armed guards. People have lost their collective minds.
Well, you're also sort of showing your hand, because you're not just about governing and governing safely and, keep filling the potholes and making sure that the firemen have uniforms and that there's diesel fuel in the fire trucks and that the cops are well equipped. This is you controlling the people. You are showing your hand. If this is something that puts a shiver up your leg as a appointed political person, or a political person that's voted in, as somebody who has chosen that for a living, there's really two types. There's the ones that just kind of want to get out of the way, do what's best, and govern. And then there are the ones who show their hand. They want to control. They want to tell you what to do.
It's so revealing. It's so revealing. And by the way, speaking of potholes, instead of putting people to work filling potholes during this time period where you don't have to close off streets or whatever else, instead, they've got people in bulldozers pushing sand into skateboard parks. Speaking of La Cañada, I sent Gary a picture. They closed the skate park in La Cañada on Cornichon because God forbid that anybody's at a skate park. They have, the governor, as we're speaking, issued an order closing the beaches, even though the sheriffs of separate counties got up and said, there you go, the skate park is closed. Doesn't that look like a breeding ground right there for, mind you, they closed the skate park, but up until a week ago today, communal eating at nursing homes was allowed. Okay, because that makes sense, right?
Well, all these assholes hide behind science. Like, listen, we're going to govern by science. We're going to listen to the scientists. Okay, fucking listen to the scientists then, idiots.
Right.
And don't give us this shit. I've just heard the news where it's like, well, they're talking about reopening the schools slowly in July because children haven't been hit as hard. No. That is not the correct terminology. It's not haven't been hit as hard. It's been untouched. They've been untouched.
Under 18 is some incredibly, if it's not zero, it's as close as you can get to statistically zero nationally.
Right.
Statistically zero. There isn't anything that's statistically zero, yet under 18 for coronavirus.
Yeah, there's a handful of teenage boys who've never smoked who die of lung cancer. but it doesn't mean we should focus all our money and efforts to preventing 19-year-olds who are non-smokers getting lung cancer from dying, because statistically it doesn't exist.
I think Gary just sent me the stat.
Yes.
What is it, Gary?
For deaths for under 18, it's 0 per 100,000. That's not to say that it is 0, but in that sample size, it's 0.
So what I'm saying,
so
but
compare
what I'm saying
that
go ahead. The pussy news agencies do not couch it as that demographic hasn't been hit quite as hard. I heard this. I hear the same thing. They're standing at the county line in Ventura, and they go, they're reopening the beaches in Ventura County because Ventura County hasn't been hit quite as hard as LA County. It's like, it's not quite as hard. It's almost nothing.
Well, I'm going to file. I'll give everybody a heads up. I've got a consortium of businesses. They approached me, and I had to basically limit them to I think 50 is what the entry is for San Luis Obispo. Gary can go on and take a look. San Luis Obispo has I think only one recorded death last time I looked. One recorded death in the entire county. They closed the beach. The governor closes the beach. How do you close the beach of a county that's got one reported death, and God only knows? I feel for that person, but what are we talking about here? There you go. They've got 184 cases, right? And 144 recovered, and one death. And I'm not making light of the death, but right now, when there's $40,000 incentive payments to declare a death corona, I think we're probably erring on the side of over-reporting as opposed to under.
Well, also, please, everyone, use your brains. That one person who died most likely died in a nursing home or had a pre-existing condition and was certainly over 75 years of age. I had some dickweed tweet me, and he's like, hey, in New Jersey, in the state of New Jersey, more New Jerseyans have died of coronavirus than Vietnam, Korean War, and World War I combined. Okay. They skipped World War II. I guess it had a higher death toll in New Jersey. But everyone listen to this. Okay, that's true. I'm going to go along with you and say that's true. Here's my question. What was the average age of the person that died from New Jersey in World War I versus coronavirus? Half of the people who died in New Jersey were in a fucking nursing home when they died of the coronavirus. Half of them had dementia. The average age of the guy who died in World War I was 19. Don't you think there's a difference?
Well, I'm just going to talk about, I don't want to minimize the death. I don't want to minimize the virus. What I do want to do is have people try to act rational. And I have seen this on the cable news channels, which is they keep reporting the deaths. They keep reporting where it's taking place. Well, by the way, as of when we're recording, 40% of the deaths in the county, which is the epicenter, by the way, of the entire virus in the state, 43%, guess where? Nursing homes. Guess what else? The other pocket of confirmed cases is Terminal Island, where they finally tested, and some outrageous number of prisoners held at Terminal Island have tested positive for coronavirus. Now, let me try to break this down. We knew from day one that the vulnerable were people who were in and I think that the Terminal Island is the largest proportion of infection in the penal system. That's in LA County. So we're getting lumped in with that. These politicians knew going in that the vulnerable, the elderly, and those who were in close quarters were the most at risk. Did they immediately close down the nursing homes, Adam? No. Did they immediately furlough the people from Terminal Island? By the way, most of the guys in Terminal Island, and it's mostly guys, most of them are there for white collar style things and were allowed to self-surrender generally, where you could just have all these people home confined in some kind of GPS related, meaning a ankle bracelet.
Ankle bracelet.
Right. And now, by the way, nearly 60%, as Gary just said, are infected. And so there are people who say, well, it's prisoners. Who gives a shit? Hey, Sherlock, the people who then give a shit are the correctional officers who have to go in there every day and deal with this, get infected, and bring it out to the community. So we allow the same thing at the nursing homes, where the people have no PPE coverings. We're worried about doing it on the horse trails. We're worried about closing down the beaches, as opposed to close down the institutions and get them the PPE that they need immediately. Why didn't they do that 2 months ago? Well, I don't understand what was going on. Instead, we completely tanked the economy. We put all of these small businesses out to pasture, and now all of a sudden we finally come to the realization maybe we shouldn't be doing communal eating at a nursing home. A week ago, that's when they realized this.
Hey, there was just a bunch of stuff coming out that Cuomo and de Blasio forced people who are infected to go return to the nursing homes, that they said you cannot reject these people. They must rejoin the population.
Right. They're so busy lionizing them because they made us feel better. Okay, it's good to be at home. We're lionizing these people because, by the way, and I'm the fucking left-wing Democrat here. I was just on with the New York Times, who was questioning whether or not my lawsuits are political. I said, dude, I've never voted for a Republican in my life that I can remember. Why are you saying it's political? I'm watching them crush. I'm watching the mayor crush small businesses. He goes, oh, you're talking about your mariachi band plaintiffs? I said, wait, excuse me, I've got plaintiffs, I've got restaurants, I've got the small businesses, I've got CPA firms, I've got whatever else. Are you mocking the mariachi band? Because what? It's better for them to not work, and if they're undocumented, they'll get a check from the government, as opposed to you trying to let people work rationally. I mean, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with this crazy psychosis. And by the way, I'll take an opportunity to smash the people on the other side. If you're going to protest, more power to you. But don't sit there and do the exact same thing and let yourself be fodder for the other crazies on the other end of the spectrum. You can protest. You can protest without infecting. It has allowed, in your words, Adam, it is revealing. It has allowed us to see exactly what all of these positions and people's kind of motivations are.
No, it's as if it's like I took my twins. If I took my twins and I said, Sonny, Natalia, come in here. On Monday, Sonny, you're going to be in charge of Natalia. You will be in charge of her. Natalia will do anything. He'll be the warden. You'll be the prisoner. You'll have to do anything he says to do. He'd say, okay. And if I checked with him midday on Monday, Sonny'd be in his room playing video games, and I'd go, hey, warden, where's your prisoner? And she'd go, I don't know. I think she's in her room. If I said on Tuesday, now, Natalia, it's your turn. You're in charge. You're the warden. Sonny's your prisoner. If I came back on Tuesday, Sonny would be doing push-ups and Natalia would be piling weights on his back, and there'd be a bowl of shit underneath him on a plate, and she'd be calling him a maggot and telling him he was worthless and weak and needed to do one more. And so what I'm saying is if you're wired like Sonny, you don't care. It's like you don't. But if you're wired like certain politicians, this is an opportunity. This is an opening. You shall now use your power against the people. And it's kind of revealing. Like if you heard that press conference with Cuomo, where the person was saying, hey, what do you say to a poor person who's out of food, out of money, needs to leave the house, needs to work? He's yelling at her, like he's berating her. He doesn't say, I understand. That's got to be horrible. Let me tell you what I'm doing to address that. Here's my plan. Here's what I think that person to. He's mocking the person. He's saying, you leave, you die. You get the virus, you die. And then she's saying, well, what if he commits suicide? Hey, he commits suicide. That's not giving me the virus. That's his problem, basically. And then at a certain point, he starts mocking her. Like he goes, then get a job that's sorry. What do we call get an essential job? Get an essential job. You want to work? Get an essential job. It's like what? Become a certified nurse in the next 3 days?
No. Let me give you an example. An essential job. Costco, Target. Those are essential jobs. I just spoke to yesterday a woman who runs an outdoor flea market where she can do social distancing. She's built this thing up. It's in the city of LA. She does it. I won't say where it is because then, they'll send LAPD out to arrest her or something. But as she asked me the question, I didn't have a good answer. Why is my outdoor flea market, which services a community that doesn't go to Costco, that takes public transportation or has to walk in a small area, why is that less essential than letting a large place, the corporation, open up and have people inside of there to be a breeding ground? How do you make a distinction there? I mean, if you're following the science, outdoor flea market is safer than indoor Costco.
I'll tell you what the decision-making process is in 2020. They open up the flea market in the Palisades. A bunch of citizens, taxpayers, go walking up and down buying fresh produce. Some asshole busybody takes a picture of people being too close together, some not wearing masks and not social distancing. Then they tweet it to TMZ and they tweet it to the mayor's office and they tweet it to all the other pussies who live in Los Angeles. And then all those people, because they're heroes, go on Twitter and they go, this is an outrage. I can't believe the mayor's letting this happen. These people are ignoring all the social distancing. And then the mayor sees it and the mayor goes, I've got a new policy. No more outdoor flea markets and no more produce markets, no more. So that's how it works. That's how policy works in 2020. It's not a policy, it's a popularity contest.
Well, has anybody ever stopped to say, why is it that something that would appear by all science to be safer than having people go indoors to massive amounts of people in a Costco or a Target? Why is that safer than a flea market? And if you're making a distinction, what is the scientific basis for that?
Listen, I talked to Dr. Drew about this the other day, and I've heard from other credible sources. They don't have an instance of this thing being transferred outdoors. They don't have examples. They don't have examples of that. And one of the things that's interesting about that you'll probably enjoy, putting on your lawyer's hat and just your thinking man's hat, which is if everyone who's been infected, when they come in to the ER, they come in to get treated, they say, how did you get it? Or where do you think you got it? And most people give an answer. They go, I live at home and my wife's a nurse and she got it. And then I got it from her. They all have an answer on who they got it from, how they got it. They were so-and-so and so-and-so. We all know the stories. If they got it outdoors through jogging or mountain bike riding or walking their dog, when the doctor said, where did you get it? They go, I don't know. I don't know. Everyone in my house is fine. I've only gone out to walk the dog. I don't know where I got it. That would be the answer. It'd be a lot of, I don't know where I got it. You think about it, walking on the horse trail would probably not be in anyone's top 5 of where they got it. But so far as I can tell, they don't even know that you can give it outside.
Well, and by the way, when they say we're going to follow the science, great. Well, they also say we don't know if the antibodies are effective against a reoccurrence, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you hear other people talking about, epidemiologists are then saying, well, the second wave is going to be worse. Well, what are you basing that on? I don't understand. Because you want to prolong this? Because you're afraid that somehow you're going to lose your grip on power? I will tell you, here in California, what is already happening is that, by the way, originally the justification for this stripping of all of your rights was based on the fact that we don't have the hospital capacity to when there's a surge. Well, that's come and gone. That argument has failed. Yet now we're getting more draconian. We're closing down beaches. Well, that would be fine and dandy, but there's a problem. In this one-party state, and we're basically a one-party state here, my party, the Democratic legislators are starting to say, wait a second here, this guy's starting to act like a king on the governor's side. I've been screaming this mayor is out of control for as long as anybody will listen. And by the way, what happened to that scourge amongst the homeless? I haven't, they're testing positive. I got it. But apparently there's no, the homeless have some kind of superior immune system because it's not taking them down in the numbers that it's taking down people in the nursing homes or in penal institutions. So there might be an explanation there. And I have another question for you. If they have this authority to begin with, and to go out, send out police to shut down AA meetings, yet deem alcohol delivery essential. You know, nobody's going to argue with that alcohol is essential, but except me, never. But why is it that when a homeless person who's housed in a motel that we're paying a fortune to the owner of the motel, and she's been tested positive for corona, and she goes missing, and the mayor and the police chief are asked about it, and they say, well, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
What do you mean there's nothing you can do? You can send out people to arrest people in legitimate businesses or criminally charge them, but somebody who's positive for the virus, there's nothing you can do. They've got a mental health issue. Have you ever heard of 5150? You ever heard of 5152? I don't understand. Are you recognizing the fact that, God forbid, if you tried to enforce this, that would then mean that somebody would be able to challenge it in a legal setting and you might lose? Just throwing that out there.
Listen, music to my ears. I'll wrap this subject up with this statement, and then we'll move on to Minka and Joe, because that was quite a grilling from yesterday. I was listening to some of it. I want to get your opinions on it. Maybe Gary can pull up some of Mika Brzezinski hitting Joe Biden, because she went at him hard. I will say this, and it's something we brought up a lot. It reminded me when you said the whole reason for the lockdown was to stop the curve, was to flatten the curve. We're going to flatten that curve. So everyone must be locked down, and, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. We don't have enough respirators. We don't have enough masks. We don't have enough gowns. We don't have enough beds. And do you want to be in charge of the death squad who has to tell these people who's going to live and who can't live because we don't have enough respirators? Okay, that's how it was sold to us. Now, that did not come to fruition. They can say it's because of the lockdown that didn't come to fruition. I don't totally believe that. But even if it did,
assume it, right?
Assume it. It didn't happen. Now that's over. So let's undo this lockdown. And their answer is no, we're going to continue the lockdown, even though the hospitals are empty and we have nothing but respirators and gowns now. This is no different than what I've always said. The city of Los Angeles is going to tack on a 2 cents on a dollar tax to pay for the Olympics just until the Olympics are over. And then when the Olympics are over, we're going to rescind that tax. Do they ever rescind that fucking tax? No.
Never. The state of California, the high earner tax, right? It's going to sunset. Jerry Brown sold that. He lied to me directly to my face. I will not extend it. So I guess he really didn't lie. He didn't extend it. He just put an initiative and let the people vote on it. And of course, it passed overwhelmingly, and it's now the law.
Right. So this thing of, I'm going to do this thing, this money grab or this power grab, but it's only for this reason. And then as soon as we're done, as soon as the Olympics are over, or we flatten the curve, then we're just going to go back to whatever. But they don't go back. And the reason they don't go back is because they want the money and they want the power. If they didn't want it, then they would go back. All right. Exactly. I want to ask you about this Joe Biden, Mika Brzezinski.
Good. And I want to talk to you about General Flynn after that. So
and Flynn,
we got enough time. Yeah.
And Flynn as well. First I'll hit Credible. That's right. Credible.com. It's an online marketplace that gets you pre-qualified student loan refinance rates from up to 10 different lenders. So if you got student debt, if you got loan debt, you could benefit. With a lower rate, you can save on interest and lower your monthly payment as well. With a shorter loan term, you could get debt-free faster, consolidate your student loan bills, and do it all in one place. So get out of debt faster and lower that monthly payment as well with a lower rate. See actual pre-qualified rates from up to 10 lenders, not estimates. No, these are actual rates and only takes a few minutes, doesn't impact your credit. They'll never sell your data. You won't get spam phone calls from dozens of lenders. It's credible.com, right, Gary?
That's right. Please visit credible.com/doubt. That's credible.com/DOUBT. And when you refinance your student loans using this link, they'll give you a $200 gift card. Fill in a couple of pieces of information to check out what rates you're eligible for. Again, that's credible.com/doubt.
So Joe Biden, I was thinking about this as I was walking down to begin this podcast. We're in a very unique time in this country's history. We have two choices in our presidents, our potential presidents. One who bragged about grabbing them in the pussy, and the other who may have actually grabbed them in the pussy. Those are our only two options. Both have a very interesting relationship with pussy, but we will be governed for the next 4 years by someone who either grabbed pussy or who bragged about grabbing pussy. What other country could say that?
It's the greatest to be in America. But does Gary have a clip? Because everybody may not know what you're referring to in the debate.
Let me set the table. Let me set the table, and this is what I think went on, and you can tell me if this rings true to you, Mark. This allegation came out a month ago, and it's pretty credible if you listen to Tara Reade and you listen to her story and her accounting of it. It's pretty credible, but it was mostly ignored by the mainstream media, mostly. And they ignored it because the mainstream media is more of a Biden fan than they are Trump fan, and they just didn't want to they didn't want to torpedo their own guy. Well, what happened is an outcry of folks on the left and mostly the right came out and said, hey, you guys are the same people that said Kavanaugh was guilty before you even heard any of the testimony. You cannot be this hypocritical. If you are going to say Kavanaugh was guilty and believe all women, and we have a whole parade of senators and everyone from the left saying you have to believe everyone all the time, and now you don't believe this one or you're ignoring this one, you're a hypocrite. And it's been a steady chorus for about the last week of calling all these news outlets hypocrites. Where are you on this case? You were so vocal on the Kavanaugh hearing, and yet not a peep out of this one. So Mika Brzezinski and many on that side of the aisle probably went, fuck, we've got to really overcompensate now. Like, I can't talk to Biden and give a softball interview to Biden, because if I give a softball interview to Biden, all the people that were calling me hypocrites are now going to get a bullhorn and call me a hypocrite. So,
and by the way, while we're watching this, maybe Gary will find the one of Trump talking about Mika down at bleeding from her facelift at Mar-a-Lago, because that adds that even gives it some more rich texture in terms of motivational
So Minka
just thought I'd throw that in.
Minka went hard the other direction, and she was grilling Joe. So it's a minute 26. We'll play a clip.
Okay, let's bring in the apparent Democratic nominee for president, former Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, thank you for coming on the show this morning. We have a lot we want to ask you this morning. Okay. Joe and Willie will join in just a moment for questions on how you would handle this pandemic, the campaign, and other news of the day. But at the start, it's just going to be you and me. And I want to get right to the allegation made against you by Tara Reade. So the former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. And please, to our viewers, please excuse the graphic nature of this, but I want to make sure that there is no question as to what we're talking about. She says in 1993, Mr. Vice President, that you pinned her against the wall and reached under her clothing and penetrated her with your fingers. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube.
Right. Hey, Gary. So I told you we only have two choices for president, and they're both pussy grabbers.
Which, by the way, this allegation sounds very similar to the one by the woman in New York who said Trump did the same thing to her. Very similar. Reached under the dress, the similar allegation. I mean, I forget her name, but she got some publicity maybe a year ago.
Maybe a third-party independent can run, but I would like to vet him just to make sure he hasn't grabbed any pussy before, so I can have a non-pussy grabbing option. You know what I'm saying, Mark?
This may be why we need females, unless, of course, the females are grabbing people's junk as well. So
yeah, except for you wouldn't get a lot of complaints from a lot of guys. So Gary, I want to get into this. Hold on, I want to give Gary some marching orders.
Okay.
There's this interview gets pretty contentious, and Minka is at one point is saying, why don't you just open up the records and let the people, do a search of her name? And Biden is kind of saying there's congressional records, but we don't need to open them because they shouldn't be opened. And she's kind of saying, well, why don't we just open them enough just to see if her name is in there somewhere? And he's kind of saying because her name isn't in there. But it's interesting, and all I do is think of Mark when I hear about these sort of arguments. But there's also a way, I guess, it was kind of my same OJ argument, which is if I took a flight to Chicago and they found Lynette with her head chopped off in a shrub, and I flew back and they accused me of doing it, and I was on a flight to Chicago, I would go ballistic. I would go, give me a lie detector. You guys, I'm going to sue the shit out of everybody who's accusing and slandering my name. I wouldn't go, I know nothing of that crime. And people have reached out to my office, and my spokesperson has given my answer. Like, I wouldn't be that way. I'd be like, this chick's lying. I don't know what she's talking about. I've never done this.
By the way, that's the Trump approach. Trump does that, and he does it masterfully. He just says they're a liar, they're this and that. It was also the Clinton approach during the independent counsel. Carville was out there saying, drag $100 bill through a trailer park. So the people who are usually survive this are the ones who protest. Generally, it does not help you. In fact, I always do ask the question during jury voir dire of, are you going to be one of those jurors who say, if my client doesn't take the stand, that he must be hiding something? Because there's a natural inclination in human nature that if it were me and I was falsely accused, I would respond.
Right. And so let me just paint this scenario. You work with a handful of women that you haven't sexually assaulted, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if one of that minority, no, what if one of them said, Mark came into the office at night, he had his gym bag, he pushed me against the wall, he dropped a digit on me, and obviously that never happened. Would you answer by saying she's entitled to her opinion? I believe she should have her day in court. Like, I'm not saying she's a liar. I'm just telling you I didn't do it. Because my feeling is I'd be like, that chick's nuts. I don't know what she's talking about. And let's go take a lie detector.
I don't even think I would limit it to a situation where, whether it's sexual assault or not, I've been falsely accused, famously, on more than one occasion over the years. And my reaction usually is the same, is to push back. I don't think you should, I don't think anybody, and I've counseled clients on this, there's never anything good that happens when you just let the false accusation lie there. If, you know, the idea of just sitting there and saying, mollifying your critics, you need no better example than Al Franken. I mean, Al Franken should have pushed back. I mean, that was a joke when he went like that. That was idiotic for him to resign.
I you know, the best defense is a good offense.
Right. And especially in a situation like this, where you're dredging up something, you know, years after the fact. There's a reason that for hundreds of years we've had statutes of limitations. They were well thought out, based on demonstrable evidence. You can't just accuse somebody 20 or 30 years later of something when they haven't had an opportunity to collect the evidence or to push back in real time. I've always found that to be a real problem.
Hey, I'll let Gary find some of that testimony, or the sort of the heated exchange, or the talk, mainly, Gary, about unsealing the records that were in the Hall of Congress or wherever the hell they were. We can.
Ace,
I'd like Mark to hear that and give me his take on it.
Unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to be able to. The way that we're set up, I would traditionally task Kalen with finding this, but he's not here. And if I go to watch a video, it goes into the mix, and you guys will be able to hear it. So I won't be able to search.
Well, while we're doing that, I'll segue if you're looking anyway, because I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been breaking, because we've talked about this case nonstop. Well, I shouldn't say nonstop, but frequently. The General Flynn case. I don't know if you saw this week, Adam, but the DOJ, coming on the heels, mind you, of the Varsity Blues case with Lori Loughlin, where they finally turned over the FBI agent's notes. And in the notes, that both of the agent and then of Mr. Singer, who was a cooperating witness, had taken real-time notes that said the agent had asked him to bend the truth. And they finally turned that over. And the judge in that case said it was beyond disturbing. Then they appointed a U.S. attorney who was not connected to the case in General Flynn's situation, I believe out of Missouri, who took a look at and turned over to Flynn's new attorney notes that showed that both Flynn's then lawyer from Covington and Burling, by the way, interestingly, who also represented the NFL in my Kaepernick litigation, who also out of the exact same office, they and apparently the agent had written contemporaneous notes by Sally Yates, I believe, Lisa Page, I believe, some of the others in there, to send in the agents to try to get what was a false statement. So there is support for the idea that not only was there this idea of setting up General Flynn, but in addition to that, his own lawyer had apparently, if you believe the notes, and I want to caution, I'm not saying that you have to, but there is clearly an interpretation that his own lawyer was party to what's called a Brady or Giglio violation out of the Covington firm, which is shocking because that's always thought of as one of the whitest of white shoe firms. And having dealt with them, I always thought that they were somewhat above board, but the notes, internal notes that came out are very disturbing. Then you combine that with my case out of Utah, where they revealed this week, after I'd gone to trial, that two of their star witnesses, number one, one of their witnesses had been bribing an FBI agent. They just indicted him. They waited till after the trial to do that. And their other star witness had filed a lawsuit saying that the DOJ was letting him buy airplanes and other seized assets. And he filed that lawsuit the day after the jury started deliberating, and the government never turned that over. There is a cancer in the DOJ that I hope Bill Barr gets to the bottom of.
Well, Flynn, there's a couple things that are sort of insidious. One is they go after Flynn, 33-year general, served the country, Marine Corps, everything else. They go after him. He has to sell his house. He goes bankrupt. He has to buy the lawyer, has to, pay for an attorney and everything. And at the end, they basically say, sign this deal, plea to this deal, or we're going after your son as well. So this group of, right, and I don't, yes.
Let me just tell you something. I've always, and I forget the lawyer who told me, but there's a saying, and I've used it more than once. The difference between the Department of Justice and the mafia is that even the mafia spares the women and children. And this is a perfect example.
So this notion that we have unlimited personnel and unlimited funds, and we'll just take our unlimited personnel and unlimited funds and steer them toward your son if you don't do what we want you to do, it's despicable. Now, I don't know what his son did or was accused of doing, and I don't know that he's ever gotten in any trouble, but we all know if they go, we're just going to go after him next and ruin his life, and they've already essentially ruined your life, and you're a dad who loves his son, you go, fine, give me the paperwork, I'll sign it.
By the way, the person, by the way, who wouldn't sacrifice themselves for their son is not a person, number one, that I would ever want to represent, nor would it be somebody I'd want to spend time with.
Also, this notion, and Comey is on tape at the 90-second Why having a laugh about it. He was like, well, Trump, they're pretty chaotic and they're in transition. So I sent over a few of my guys just to see what we could get, and everyone's sort of laughing and applauding. And he's saying, I wouldn't have done it with the Bush administration or the Obama administration, but Trump was, they didn't really know what they were doing. So I figured we could get away with it. Like, meaning normally they'd have to talk to the council and they weren't going to just come in, but he's like, fuck it. I just sent two guys over. So we sent the guys over. And then there's those notes, like, what do we want to get? Do we want to get do we want to get him fired? Do we want to get a confession from him? Like, what do we want to do to him? And I thought, this is scary. And I'll tell you this, I will tell you the most insidious part of the Flynn story and many of these types of stories. The side of the media who hates Trump and thus hates Flynn or anybody associated with Trump is cheering when the FBI does this to Flynn. They like it. They're enjoying themselves. This is a good news day. They get to explain, instead of doing any homework or ask real questions about what danger this guy posed or what exactly he's being accused of, they can't stop applauding it. That is the insidious part of this.
Let me tell you, I've mentioned this, I think, on one or two podcasts before. The judge presiding over that case, Judge Emmett Sullivan, I haven't practiced in front of him, but I've been on a panel, at least one with him, and I've followed him for years. I have the utmost respect for him. And by the way, he also was the one who said, do you want me to sentence you now because I think you've betrayed this flag? And that was based on sealed documents. I am fascinated by what his reaction to all this is going to be, because if it turns out that, in fact, the Department of Justice tried to hoodwink Judge Sullivan, it is going to be a shit show of monumental proportions. I don't think that he's going to stand for the fact that he was misled. If it turns out that this is much ado about nothing, I think we'll find out. But he's always struck me as one of the guys who you want who calls it like he sees it. He's truly calls it straight down the middle. And he's not going to be a guy who's going to sugarcoat it. He's the kind of exactly the judge you would want, who will give you the straight scoop. And that, I'm like a little kid on Christmas Eve waiting for his reaction to everything that's happening in this case.
Well, I can tell you that while it's not a story that's been front and center, there's been a handful of reporters who have been working on Flynn and many of these Roger Stone, many of these stories, sort of all the players, the Comeys and the Brenners, and is it Brenner or Brennan? Either way,
Brennan.
All these guys all along the way. And we've been, as Americans, very caught up in many other stories other than this story, but they've been working on this for about three years now, and they've been right every step of the way. And now they got Barr, and Barr seems to be devoting more energy and more resources toward basically FBI and what they've been doing. The thumbnail sketch is when Trump became the president, a handful of people sort of within the FBI thought we must mobilize to see what we can do to stop him, essentially, because he's dangerous. He poses a threat. And, in a weird way, maybe they're super patriots. But either way, they were sort of like the group of generals when Hitler took power who were like, we've got to sneak a bomb into this guy's bunker and blow him up. Like, he is going to destroy the world and us with it. And the further they get down the road with the Steele dossier and a lot of Flynn and Stone and a lot of these players and characters, the more you're realizing this was not a conspiracy theory. There is much more meat on this bone, and it continues to come out.
Well, I'm telling you, just because I've had the personal experience, mind you, I was the one who was kind of poo-pooing this when you were early money on it. And this is my world. This is the world I live in. I was so naive during this Utah trial that I thought one of the witnesses who was testifying about the corruption by law enforcement, I thought this guy had mental health issues. And I now realize, once I see the lawsuit that they conveniently waited to file until the day after the jury starts deliberating, and once they revealed this week that one of the cooperating witnesses had an FBI agent on his payroll, you start to say to yourself, this corruption, this government corruption within the DOJ, within law enforcement, is real, palpable, and it's mind-boggling.
And it's probably wider and deeper than we
wider and
thought.
Deeper than we ever thought. I literally feel like a Pollyanna based on it. I mean, it's stunning to me what has gone on and what is allowed to be going on.
Well, we will revisit. I'll tell you what we'll do next week. We'll take the Mika Biden thing and a lot of the heated back and forth and a lot of, I like to break down the game film, which is what should Biden have said when Mika said X, Y, and Z? How would you answer this, Mark? And we can also say, what questions would you have asked? So we're going to break down that game film.
Can we also bring Drew in next week? Because boy, has somebody been vindicated, and I think we need to talk to Drew.
I agree. So we'll do all that as well. We'll get that prep for next week, and God knows what else will come up between now and then. Surely
right,
a lot.
Exactly.
All right, my fellow patriot, I shall see you on the trail.
Okay, I'll see you there. Thank you, Adam. Bye, Gary.
So until next time, this is let's give some plugs out. You can go to adamcarolla.com and find out what I'm up to. You can go to Chassis, CHASSY. You can check out all my stand-up on my homepage, which is at youtube.com/Adam Carolla, and pre-order my new book, I'm Your Emotional Support Animal. I just finished the audio today, so it's going to be ready to go, and it's a good one. You can get that at Amazon. Mark, what do you got?
I got Engine Company for delivery. You can call, I think it's 213-624-6996, 10E Mediterranean for delivery, 213-488-1096, I think. And I've got a new venture, which is called Zen Monkey. Go to zenmonkey.com, plug in RD promo code, and they'll give you a discount. It's a breakfast-soaked oats, which is very healthy. Try it out.
So, till next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.